Awesome. Thanks, Sean. Up next, we have our last morning keynote, Capturing Knowledge with Gen AI to Scale Transformation. First is Judith Williams, the co-founder of Sugarwork. Dr. Judith Williams is known for focusing on cross-functional outcomes across organizations and has more than 20 years of global human resources and cross-cultural diversity experience. Prior to her work at Sugarwork, she served as the Senior Vice President, Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer at SAP, where she was responsible for more than 100,000 employees. She holds an AB from Harvard College, an MA and PhD from Stanford University. Along with her is David, who is the former CEO of Atrion Corp, which designs, patents, and manufactures medical devices in the cardiovascular, can't say that word, ophthalmology? Nice. Fluid and drug delivery markets for worldwide sale. He has experience in talent management, R&D, business development, and regulatory affairs. They're going to pack in a lot of insights around capturing expert knowledge with Gen AI in 15 minutes. Please welcome them to the stage. Thank you.
Is the clicker? Okay. All right. Okay. Well, we're going to have a chat in a few, but before I do that, I want to just let you know, for those of you who might not have come by our booth, what Sugarwork actually is. We are an AI-powered knowledge capture tool for enterprise, and what we focus on is what you will be very familiar with. It's the big bottom of that pyramid. It's the tacit knowledge that's undocumented, and we want to get knowledge out of the heads of experts and into a format that is shareable and scalable across an organization. And these trends you'll probably recognize, as we've seen, the baby boomers are retiring. We're all struggling with retention, hybrid work, lots of changes. And they've exacerbated that need for us to make sure we document tacit knowledge. A little bit about how Sugarwork works. We have some templates that are customized for function and specific use case. We group employees together in your organization, and then our Gen AI tool, our bot comes in, it records, it transcribes, it summarizes, and it creates essentially a localized LLM. So if that person should leave the organization, you can still ask them questions, and we also have some very specific outputs like SOPs or transition guides. So I just wanted to let you know, for those of you who might not have talked to us in the booth, who we are at Sugarwork. But really why you're here, I'm sure, is to talk to David. And as you've heard, David is the former CEO of Atrion Corporation, a leader in medical device manufacture for many years. And like many of us, David was dealing with issues of talent retention and managing specialized knowledge, as well as doing all the things that a CEO needs to do to keep a business running and to keep a business growing. And so he's going to share some of his insights. And he was dealing with those challenges. That's one of the reasons, or probably the biggest reason, that he deployed Sugarwork at Atrion. And shortly after he deployed Sugarwork at Atrion, you'll see he looks really comfortable for a CEO, I have to say. It's because he was able to have an exit and had an offer for M&A. And I'm not going to say that's because of Sugarwork. But it was just after he deployed with us, so I don't know. So thank you so much, David, for coming and talking with us. So let's start with that talent retention issue. I recently read that a report that said 33% of employers expect employee turnover to increase next year. And they place the average cost at about $100K per employee. So it's obvious that talent retention matters, especially industries like yours, where specialized knowledge is really key to your success. And I know this was something that you definitely had in mind when you implemented Sugarwork. So I wonder if you could tell me how you were thinking about talent retention and managing that risk.
So, first of all, my company, 750 employees in 3 states. I didn't have people like you. And I realized as we saw sort of an increasing amount of turnover, retirements in the organization, that filling those slots was getting just increasingly difficult for us. And the landscape for labor just increasingly competitive. So, we needed sort of an out-of-the-box solution that was going to get us several steps down the road very, very fast. So that was the initial, I think, attraction to Sugarwork. It saved us an enormous amount of time. If you don't have a robust knowledge management function, trying to start and document all these procedures, try to sort of get that tacit knowledge out so that it's explicit across the organization and, of course, shared across multiple sites, it's really impossible to do without an AI-based platform.
Great. And what you've just outlined, and we all understand this, that effective knowledge sharing is going to be key to any team's success. So when knowledge is siloed, it creates inefficiencies. You probably saw this. How did you approach knowledge sharing, and what did you learn from these efforts?
It's interesting. I think we actually approached it completely wrong. We learned as it went. So we were looking sort of for the bread and butter, right? Like, let's prevent knowledge from going out the door due to retirement or someone giving 2-week notice. We didn't really look at it as a collaboration tool, especially across sites. And especially where we had an R&D function and a manufacturing function, and you want the manufacturing people to be telling the R&D folks what not to do in the future. So we began sort of very, very, very tactically. I think we began to see the collaborative nature of it as we got into the project. And ultimately, and I think we'll touch on this in a little while, for me personally, I actually completely misunderstood the power of the tool at the C level. So it was very, very different.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And so it seems like there's this move from the tactical to the strategic. And I know that one of the strategic risks for any organization is when you have a few key employees who have that they possess critical knowledge that no one else has. And so we know how important it is as a CEO to ensure continuity and reduce risk in order to have long-term stability in your organization. And so tell us about how you were managing that risk and ensured that your business could continue smoothly without being too reliant on this small group of employees.
I think before we did this, we were playing a game of Jenga, where one key person leaves, all of a sudden you see this collapse that you didn't even anticipate. And so in my company, we have a mix of blue-collar and white-collar people. We sort of knew that there were certain, I'm going to call them artisans, people who sort of had very, very special skills. I think I was shocked when I began to sort of look at this and realize just how much specialized knowledge there was in places. So for example, we had an automation engineering group, right? So I assumed we could do any robotics project, right? What became clear to me was we had a lot of skills in that group in one area. Like in coding, not a lot of skills, let's say, in vision systems. I know it seems very, very granular, but when you're at the right altitude and you're sort of beginning to look at the organization, you really need to see where these vulnerabilities are.
Mm-hmm. One thing that you have shared is that you thought tactically about Sugarwork, but then you realized that it actually gave you insight into the question of, do you have the talent and the skills to execute your strategy? And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that.
I'm going to say something very harsh about C-level people. Please don't get me in trouble for this. I think most CEOs form strategy in a fire, ready, aim kind of process, completely backwards. So I have a great idea. This is what we're going to do, right? Because the CEO job, it's all about growth, right? Everything else is extraneous. That's what I was being measured on every day on the NASDAQ. Okay, so come up with an idea, you guys go execute it. What you should be doing, actually, is understanding what your organization is capable of. Where are the holes in my talent? Where are the holes in my knowledge? If we have an idea that, gee, you know what, we think we want to get into a new business line, at least understanding what talent you need to acquire, that tells you whether or not that strategy is going to work. At the end of the day, the greatest idea in the world that can't be executed is a fail. Right? So I really think, and I confess to this ignorance myself, it's so incumbent upon all knowledge management professionals to shake their CEOs senseless and get them to understand that knowledge management is not documentation and process. Knowledge management is a strategic function. And so by getting tools that are AI-based like Sugarwork, what you're really doing for your knowledge management team is twofold. You're creating white space for them, right? Because now like the AI is essentially taking a heavy lift off of them, and you're allowing them to use that white space to really become strategic advisors so that you can honestly see that what your 5-year growth plan is going to look like, right? Is it realistic or not before you embark down that road?
That's right. And so as we're thinking about something like a long-term AI, or sorry, long-term ROI scalability, you know, as companies grow, scaling efficiently becomes more important. And the ability to continue to operate effectively and get that long-term ROI from your investments in talent and technology and other functions, how did you think about that long-term scalability of your company, and what strategies did you use to ensure that growth was actually sustainable?
You know, again, for me, it actually totally changed what our growth plan was going to be, right? Because now all of a sudden, if a knowledge management professional had come to me and said, oh, we're going to document all these processes and procedures, I never would have looked at it. It would have been just way too much, right? All of a sudden, I had this very well synthesized picture of what my organization looked like. So the first time I looked at it was really just sort of out of curiosity to see what the tool was doing, right? That's when I sort of realized that I actually really did not have a very good understanding. You know, when we talk about the ROI side of things, if you don't mind my shifting a little bit into that, I mean, our ROI on Sugarwork was actually 9.5 months. I would think for most organizations, it's no more than 2 years. And like those metrics, I would just use the simple ones if I were you, right? Like speed of onboarding, the efficiency you gain when someone gives 2-week notice, right? You're not scrambling so much to do it. Training obviously much faster, but that satisfies the finance question, right? We're going to get our money back 1 to 2 years max, right? What you really need to push is over and above that, right? There's some intangible benefits, right? The numbers aren't easy to crunch, but you're getting your money back, right? Here's the real value, right? And that's that strategic part of it. And that's everything from all of a sudden much better sort of collaborative working across the organization, getting that tacit knowledge out, and now it's becoming explicit and it's shared throughout the organization, right? And then as we move up the hierarchy in the company, right, for the C-level, really beginning to understand what we're capable of, what we're not capable of. There were certain things I thought, well, I know what our secret sauce is. It was really interesting to sort of see this mapping of the organization. We had a lot more secret sauce than I was aware of, and it did fundamentally shift sort of where our next product development was going to go.
Great. Now I'm going to ask one final question as something of a curveball, which is, okay, if you are leading a knowledge management department, function, or just a project, what is the killer metric that is going to convince the CEO, a CEO like you, that they should invest in the work you're doing?
A CFO is going to look at the 1 to 2 year payback, just the efficiencies you're going to gain on that training and process side, right? A CEO should be looking at a much different metric, right? And a CEO should be saying, this is really like a way to actually get buy-in from all levels of the organization into a strategy. And by that I mean, we deployed this very badly. We went to people and like, oh, you're great, you've been here. We had a lot of 40-year employees, right? And the reaction was very, very forceful, which is, what, you think you can spend 3 hours with me and get like 40 years out of my head? Like, I'm offended by you. And we ended up having to fight a lot of fires as a result of that. If we had approached this the right way, which is, this is a tool that's going to inform our growth for the next 5 years, right? I need you to help be a part of that strategy, and that's why I'm having you do this. Ultimately, when the strategy is sort of fully baked, I can go back to the employee base, right, and say, this is thanks to you, right? Like, I'm not the genius that came up with this, right? All of you are, and all of a sudden now I have that buy-in for the plan going forward.
Great. Well, thank you very much, David.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure hearing from you. Thanks for the time, and I know that the challenges that you faced are the challenges that so many of us have faced in our organizations. So thanks again.
Thank you.